Okay. Good evening and welcome. This is a regular meeting of the Princeton Planning Board on Thursday, November 7th, 2024. Pursuant to Section 13 of the Open Public Meetings Act, adequate notice of the time and place of this meeting has been given by prominently posting the resolution of regularly scheduled meetings of the Planning Board of Princeton for February 2024 through January 2025. A copy was filed with the Clerk of Princeton on January 8th, 2024. Legal notice on the adoption of said resolution was published in the January 12th, 2024 edition of the Princeton Packet. Notice of this meeting has also been posted to the municipal website, princetonandj.gov/calendar. Notice that all regular and special meetings of the Princeton Planning Board will be held electronically via Zoom, was transmitted to the Princeton Packet and the Times, and was filed with the Clerk of Princeton on Tuesday, January 17th, 2023. Please note this meeting is being recorded. During hearings on applications for development, members of the public will have an opportunity to comment and ask questions. Public comment is heard by the board after an applicant's representatives have finished their presentations and have been questioned by board members and staff. Those wishing to comment orally should virtually raise your hand by clicking on the reactions button or the raise hand icon at the bottom of your Zoom screen, or if participating by phone, by pressing *9. Oral comments will be taken in the order in which hands were raised. We ask with respect that members of the public express your views in 3 minutes or less. A countdown clock will be used to help speakers keep track of time, and speakers who exceed 3 minutes will be interrupted. Inappropriate public comment containing obscenity, hate speech, or relating to matters not before the board will be muted. Carrie, will you call the roll, please?
Mr. Bodikheimer.
Here.
Ms. Capizzoli.
Here.
Mr. Cohen.
Here.
Mr. McGowan.
Here.
Ms. Nuka.
Here.
Mr. O'Donnell.
Here.
Ms. Perlmutter.
Here.
Ms. Sachs. Mr. Taylor. Ms. Wilson Anderson.
Here.
Mrs. Wilson.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Announcements. Justin?
Yes,
There
thank
he
you,
is.
Madam Chair. Yeah. And good evening, members of the board and members of the public. Not so much of an announcement, well, I guess a little bit, but just that there is a board meeting next Thursday night. It's a Princeton University application. We've kind of gone out of order, as I mentioned a few weeks ago, or not out of order, but we've had 4 meetings in 5 weeks. So just a reminder, next week is the 5th or the 4th and 5th week. So I also bring this up just to thank you all for being here for all of those, both board members and staff.
Thank you. And I agree that thank you to everybody. Thanks, Mr. Lesko, and thanks to the board. Okay, I don't think we have any subcommittee reports tonight. And I don't have any announcements. Are there any other announcements from board members or from staff? Okay, let's move into the application then. We have one here from Princeton Shopping Center, preliminary and final major site plan with variances for signage. This is at 301 North Harrison Street, file number P2424-506P.
And Madam Chair, proof of publication and service are in order, and the board has jurisdiction.
Excellent. Thanks, Jerry.
Yep.
Mr. Lesko, want to get us started?
Certainly. Jerry, would you like to swear me in?
Yeah, if you could raise your right hand, and is Dan here, and he's going to testify too, I assume? Dan?
Yes.
Yeah, Dan Weissman, Derek as well.
And Derek, yes. Derek, you're here?
Yes, I am.
Yes,
Okay.
great.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony about to give will be the truth?
Yes, sir.
I do.
So sworn or affirmed.
Thank you, Jerry, and thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to share my screen as I normally do. Let's see if I could get it working on the smaller computer. And I am sharing, I'm using the Nearmap GIS software mapping application for today's application before you. if we'd like to make this PB1, Jerry.
Yes, please.
Yep, this is different from what I normally show, like the one from the software from Rowan University or the NJGO web one, because there have been changes quite literally to the shopping center in the past months since the imagery on those was last updated. But as you can see here, this imagery is from about 2 weeks ago. So this is, you can't get much more up to date than that. Without further ado, you see the Princeton Shopping Center in the center of your screen at 301 North Harrison Street. It is in the SC Shopping Center zoning district of the former township. Grover Park is to the east. Mostly single-family homes are to the south. Single-family homes in a small office building are to the west. And a new apartment building known as the Alice is to the north. In the future, a road will connect Terhune Road to the shopping center. And I'm just bringing all these up to remind everyone. I'm sure everyone here knows all about the shopping center, and many of the board members have seen all these applications in the near past. So you can see the 6 buildings of the shopping center around an internal courtyard. They're surrounded by surface parking, and these buildings are designated A through F. You could also see, maybe if I zoom in, if I could figure out how to do that. You could see, and I'll take the roads layer off. You could also see the new Avalon Princeton on Harrison is what they're calling it, apartment building on part of the courtyard. There are also 3 standalone buildings towards North Harrison Street, PNC Bank, Nomad Pizza Company, and the new Walgreens standalone drive-through pharmacy. The shopping center was opened in 1954. Zooming ahead to 2021, the board approved a minor subdivision and major site plan application to allow for the Walgreens building to relocate from Building D, which was over here, to its current location in the new building. The old Walgreens portion was demolished and the apartment building was approved to be put in its place. The portion of Building D next to the demolition was approved to have a different facade and signage scheme as part of that application. I would describe that scheme as a more minimalist one with facades painted white and building features in black. Then in 2023, the site plan committee classified and recommended approval of a minor site plan application to allow for the remainder of Building D to follow that same scheme while the rest of the building is under construction. So since then, the applicant has received administrative waiver approvals to continue this facade and signage scheme at buildings B, C, E, and F to match Building D. And those are all the ones around the courtyard, except for the one with McCaffrey Supermarket. This would create essentially one look consistently between all of the buildings of the shopping center, except for McCaffrey's and the PNC Bank, but including the new Walgreens, the Avalon apartment building to some extent, and the Nomad Pizza building, which was already similar to that scheme. While these improvements are under construction, the shopping center is looking to replace all of the facade signs for those stores. Many of these signs do not require variances from the municipal zoning code and have been or are in the process of being processed administratively. Some of them are even already up, like at Starbucks, Dental Care of Princeton, and Dunkin' as of last week. So the application before the board tonight is for those facade signs for stores which require variances, or for signs, I should say, which require variances, as well as 2 other types of signs, directory signs and an identification sign. I expect the shopping center will present the details as well as images. So I will end my introduction with a brief summary of these types of signs. First, the applicant is requesting 24 variances for 24 facade signs at 16 businesses. These variances are requested to install larger signs than the municipal ordinance allows. Next, the applicant is requesting 7 variances to install 3 directory signs. There are currently 4 directory signs on the site, as is permitted by ordinance. The existing ones are required to be located in a courtyard or passageway leading to the courtyard and can have a maximum area of 8 square feet and a maximum height of 5 feet. A variance would then be required to allow the 3 additional ones on top of the 4 directory signs that the ordinance allows. The three proposed are each 8 feet in height, requiring variances from the maximum height of 5 feet. Two of them would be 27 feet in area, and the third would be 96 square feet in area compared to the 8 square feet allowed. Thus, those would also require variances.
So Justin, the four existing directory signs, they need variances as well?
No, they do not. Those are allowed under the ordinance.
So how do we come up with 7 variances when there's 3 new directory signs? I don't understand that.
So the 3 for the area of each, 3 for the height of each, and 1 for the number of 3, you know,
Okay.
3 additional on top of the 4. So I guess we could have, you call it 7, you call it 9.
That's fine.
Yep,
That's
yep.
clarified. Thank you.
Yeah, good question though. The
Yeah,
two smaller
thank you.
ones of those signs would be near the new road from Terhune and near the Walgreens respectively along the road. The larger one would be near the center's current main vehicular entrance off of Valley Road. And again, I'm just giving a brief introduction because I'm sure they're going to reinforce this through their presentation with images and locations and all that. So lastly, the applicant is requesting a quote, landlord shopping center identification sign with retailer names, end quote. This sign would be identical in size to the larger directory sign that's being asked for at 96 square feet and is proposed to be in an existing grass area along Harrison Street by Nomad Pizza. This type of sign is not permitted by ordinance, which requires a variance. Though there are 2 shopping center identification signs along North Harrison Street near the Walgreens entrance and near the Valley Road entrance. One of those signs will be replaced by a new one with the shopping center's name and Avalon's name as part of the 2021 approval and as allowed by ordinance. That's obviously the one down closer to the Walgreens. I had that incorrect in my staff report, so I did want to clarify it here. There's not going to be 2 separate ones there. The one that's already there is being replaced.
Okay,
And this new proposed identification sign before you would also require a variance to be internally illuminated. So I have a few questions as well as comments from my staff report, though I will hold them until the end, if you would allow, Madam Chair. I'd like to defer to the applicant's presentation at this time, since this all probably seems pretty abstract to look at an application on signage without seeing any of the images of the signage yet. So I'll hold that. And as you know, Mr. Bridger and Mr. Weissman are also here with their engineering and zoning report. Thank you.
great, thank you. Are there any pressing, urgent, red flag type issues that Dan or Derek, you want to bring up, or shall we move right into the, nothing from Dan, I assume nothing from Derek since he didn't activate his camera. Okay,
If you
great.
have any questions, we'll address them, but Justin gave a great overview, and I think if you see the pictures, it'll help you realize.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, good, great, thank you. Mr. Letizia? On
Hello.
behalf of of the shopping center, hello, welcome. I guess you're
Hello,
up.
thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, Tom Letizia, attorney with Troutman Pepper Hamilton Sanders, representing Princeton Edens LLC, the owner of the Princeton Shopping Center. Justin did an excellent job providing an overview of this particular application. As you, I'm sure, know, there's been a number of renovations at the shopping center over the past several months. And this signage project constitutes the last phase of the exterior upgrades to the center. So Edens is very anxious to move forward with these new tenant signs. Edens has been working with their staff for many months on these plans and sort of finding a way forward to obtain relief for a certain number of tenant signs in order to provide an aesthetic, uniform appearance in terms of signage. As Justin noted, the majority of the signs for the individual tenants have already been approved through the administrative waiver process. So we're just focusing tonight on the 24 merchant signs that require a variance from, I believe it's attachment A of section T10B-297A of the sign ordinance. And the specific variance we're seeking from that standard relates to this 35% requirement, which has to be determined based on the width of the store facade for each merchant, with the total square footage for each merchant not exceeding 24 square feet. So the variance we're seeking is actually from the 35% component of that standard. None of the signs that we're going to be speaking of tonight exceed the 24 square feet. So we comply with that part of the standard. What we're focusing on is the 35%. So depending on the amount of storefront that a tenant has, that sign size can vary, obviously. And applying that sign standard to certain tenants, it just doesn't work in terms of providing what we believe is a sufficiently sized sign. So that's why we're here, in terms of hopefully getting relief, so that, as you'll see in the plans, provide for a more uniform look. The second type of sign, as Justin noted, is the directory signs. We're adding 3 to the already 4 that are on the site. And these are geared more towards vehicular traffic. The existing directory signs, or wayfinding signs, if you will, are really for pedestrians. So they're not geared towards someone in a vehicle. So the ones that we're going to talk about tonight are designed for vehicle customers, as well as emergency vehicles. And then the final sign is a new ID, project ID sign. And your staff has determined that it's a unique type sign that's not currently permitted under the ordinance. Although there are other ID signs that are on the site, this would be an additional one to, again, provide proper identity for the center. What's sort of unique about this particular ID sign is that it's going to also include some of the major tenants. So anyone driving by, again, it will provide some exposure for tenants, especially those in the rear of the shopping center. So that's essentially in terms of my introduction. I do want to note that we did review the memos from your staff, both Justin's dated October 31, as well as the engineering and zoning report from Dan and Derek of September 25th. And we'll address the questions that are raised in the reports in our testimony. But generally speaking, we have no major issues and will comply. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ryan Leeming with Edens, who's going to present the proposed signage. And
So, Mr. Letizia, let's swear in your witnesses all at once.
Sure.
And then as they speak, we will qualify them one by one right before they testify.
Okay, very good. So I just have 2. I have Mr. Leeming and then Mr. Alex Doherty, who's our professional planner.
Okay.
So
If both of you can raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that testimony about to give will be the truth?
I do.
And is the other person here?
Mr. Leeming, would you, they're both here, Jerry. Would you state your name and spell your last name for the record?
Sure.
Good evening, everyone. Ryan Leeming, Leeming. I'm the
Thank
Vice
you.
President of Development with Edens. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And Mr. Doherty, say your name and spell your last name.
Alexander Dougherty, last name is Dougherty.
Great.
Okay,
Thank-
so, well, thank you. So we'll begin with Mr. Lehman. Mr. Lehman, can you identify your position with Edens?
Sure. I'm the Vice President of Development with Edens.
And the Princeton Shopping Center is one of the retail centers that is under your control or supervision?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So with that, I believe you have a number of exhibits you're going to show regarding the proposed signage.
Yes, that's acceptable to the board. I'll share my screen and give a short presentation.
That would be great. Go right ahead.
So, Mr.
Okay.
Muller, we
Yeah,
have several
identified as
slides.
A1. I'm sorry, Ryan. A1.
We'll have all slides just marked as A1. Is that how you want to do it?
Yeah, how many in this slide deck?
I believe 24 or 25, Mr. Lee.
Okay, yep, that'd be A1.
Okay,
21 pages.
21, Jerry.
Okay, good.
Okay,
And
Go-
Mr.
please.
Leeming, to
Go ahead.
interrupt you for the fourth time, if you would identify as you go along, identify the slide that you're on, okay?
Sure.
Okay, thanks.
Sure. So, just starting here, thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board, for allowing us to be here tonight to walk you through this. As I think I heard some chatter at the beginning of the meeting, and Tom and both Justin said, we're really excited to be here. We're excited to present this and talk about this. We began this project, this facade renovation project about a year ago. And I feel like we started talking about signage about a year ago as well. And so a lot of work has gone in working with staff to bring this forward. So thank you, Justin, Derek, Dan, for the time spent. So this is just page one, my title slide here. Moving to page two, we had the benefit of having some recent drone footage of the shopping center in the neighboring area. So I thought it would be a unique way to just orient people a little bit. As I heard at the beginning of the meeting, we've talked about the shopping center a lot, so I'll keep this quick. North Harrison Street sits at the bottom of this slide, and then moving from the top left of the screen, if you can see my cursor, working your way clockwise around the property. This is just how we identify the buildings when we speak of them. So building B sits in the top left of this plan, where Concord Pet, Metropolis, Princeton Makes reside. Building C here, Ace Hardware, Blue Bears, Pizza Star. Building D, Chopped, Verizon, Center Barbershop. Building E, which represents half of the front building along North Harrison. Dunkin', Bella Boutique, Lily Pies, Mia Spagna, Cross Culture. And then building F, Starbucks, Princeton Bridal, Pastiamo, Orvis, Bagel Nook, Image Arts, and others. I only named a few of our retailers, but just to orient everyone a little bit. Wanted to just share a couple photos for those members who maybe haven't been over to the center in a little while. If you've been over, you're familiar with the project. But this is the finished look of the facades. As Justin mentioned, we did seek administrative waiver for our facade upgrades. That project began early this year, and that work is substantially complete. There's been a lot of work over there the last year. Everyone has been terrific to work with, but we're really excited to be here presenting this last piece. As you can see, some of the signs in this photo are those that were previously approved under administrative waiver. And so this is just meant to give you the look and the feel for the shopping center. Another photo taken from the other angle, just again to show some of the signs, some of the facade, the lighting we chose to go with halo illumination for all of the signs. If you remember, these signs were previously externally illuminated. We felt like this was a significant upgrade into the signage of the property. This is a shot of the courtyard, again, just to show off the shopping center, quite frankly. We're very proud of the upgrades we've done there. Some work into the clock tower, and then you can see the courtyard facades as well. If you look to the left, you see the Orvis sign. As you can see, some of the facade signs are missing, and that's really what we're here to talk about tonight, those select retail signs that need variances.
And Ryan,
Yeah.
are these slides numbered? If they are,
I'm
and you
sorry,
could-
this is number 5.
okay, that'd be great. And if you could.
Sorry about that.
No,
Yep.
no problem.
Sorry about that. Slide number 6 here, or page number 6, this is just a view of the front. Again, new awning, new facade, storefront, and then a great shot of the new Bella Boutique sign with that halo illumination. This is slide 7. This is just another, again, just some imagery just to give everyone a good feel of the look and feel here. The Lily Pies and Pastiamo signs, and absent is a Bella Boutique sign in the middle there that requires a variance. So at this point, and I don't know if it's appropriate to ask questions as I go, you're welcome to if it's appropriate, but I want to step now into the elevations of all of the buildings and just walk the board through the specific signs that we're asking a variance for or asking for relief for in context of all of the signs. So you can get a sense of what's approved, what's already either installed or to be installed versus the signs that require relief. And I'm going to go building by building. So this is slide 8 or page 8. This is building B. So again, this is the building that has Concord Pet, Metropolis, Tranquility Den. And we're looking at the parking lot side of that building, or the Grover Park side. And what I've done here is I've highlighted every sign either as it was submitted or where we may have a vacant sign or a to be determined sign. I've highlighted it in green to show that this is approved. You know, we're not specifically speaking about that sign, but we are speaking about Tranquility Den, Lacrosse Unlimited, Color Me Mine, Kids United, which is a new retailer of ours coming soon. If you've been to the shopping center, you've seen maybe some of their signs. And what this is meant to illustrate to everyone here is that while these signs are seeking a variance or seeking relief, the intent, the whole intent of this program and working with staff was to actually work with that 35% maximum square footage in the code. And so we studied each individual retailer and each individual brand and worked with each retailer on what they wanted their new brand to look and feel like, and said, okay, based upon code and the artwork you've given me, what does 35 square feet look like on the facade? And then we made a determination along with the retailer as our partner. And we said, this works, this fits, this feels good. This feels like it fits the new facade. It fits the new sign band. It doesn't feel too big. It doesn't feel too small. It fits. And then if it met that 35%, we submitted it as an administrative waiver. And we went on to the next sign and the next sign. And what we came away with was there are a handful of retailers at the shopping center that don't have a lot of frontage. They're small retailers. They're small shops. And so in some cases, they may only get a 4 square foot sign or a 5 square foot sign. But they're positioned in the center next to a retailer that gets a 12 square foot sign as a result of that 35%. So we said, well, what happens if we take that brand, we take that logo, and we upsize it to fit, not much bigger, smaller, et cetera, but to fit proportionate and consistent with everyone else? What does that look like? And really those are the elevations that you see on the screen here. And that's what drove the amount of variances that we asked for. And, you know, we did start with more, but in looking at it and really studying it and working with the retailer and saying, what if you moved your word over here, or you made this bigger, made that smaller? You know, we think we can make this work with the 35% in an effort to try to, frankly, bring the amount of variances down, right? Not come in and sort of say we need relief for everyone, but to try to think smartly and strategically about that. I'll move a little bit quicker now since I gave you that. This is page 9. This is the courtyard side of building B. Again, the approved signs are in green, and these signs we're asking for a variance are shown with some red text. And again, what we're trying to really show here is that all of the signs are a consistent size together. You know, consistent shape, consistent size, consistent height. No one's really bigger than each other. They all feel about the same. This is building C where Ace Hardware lives. Again, the green signs are approved. You know, building C, there weren't that many variances. Mathnasium is a great example of a very small retailer at the shopping center with a very large brand. So we said, well, they have that A+, that great A+ brand. What happens when we size that up appropriately? What does that do to that sign? And how does that sign look in the context of the other signs? And we felt like, again, this sign needs a variance. You know, 35% just would make it feel too small.
Mr. Cohen, quick question?
Yeah, I think this is appropriate time to ask it. I'm looking at the Pizza Star sign, and I know that Pizza Star has two frontages, right? They have a frontage into the courtyard and they have one on the side. And I'm wondering, as a general approach, when that's the case, I assume you're using both facades to get the linear foot of frontage and then calculate the 35% off of that? Or are you handling it in a different way?
It's a great question. Thanks. Thank you, Mr. Cohen.
Sure.
So what we tried to do in certain cases where a retailer has a corner space like Pizza Star or like Rita's or Mia Spagna in the front building, we looked at the larger of the two facades because the way the code is written, it's per facade. So we looked at the larger of the two first and we said, what does that get us? What does that look like? You know, we're going to take the advantage of the maximum size. What does that get us? How does that feel? And in a couple of cases, using the larger facade and going up to 35%, and then looking at the smaller facade and the 35% of that in the context of the facade, we are taking advantage of the larger facade, but again, in some cases, not fully, because that facade might be a little bit too long, and with the 35%, that sign might feel a little bit too big. We felt like that sign might feel a little bit too big. We know we have the right to go up to that 35% of the larger facade, but again, might have felt too big. And it might have pushed this sign up on the smaller facade to a place where it felt too big on that facade. So it was a little bit of a balancing act, but we did let the longer facades on those key retailers drive the initial sign design.
Could I jump in for a moment? I
Sure.
don't quite understand. So if we can use Pizza Star as an example, if you didn't use all the square footage on the facade facing the courtyard, is what you're saying that you can use that square footage that you did not use on the other facade as well as?
No,
Okay.
no. All I'm saying is we just didn't take advantage of all of the square footage that the longer facade may have provided.
Okay, fair enough.
So,
Thank you.
so does again, in the case of Pizza Star, do you have a second sign for Pizza Star at the second facade? Because it's not I mean, with the narrow width of that passageway and the awning, I'm not even sure you could see a sign that was above the awning and that's the longer facade as well, the one facing the, yeah. So do you have two signs for Pizza Star or just the one?
We do have two signs.
Okay.
We do have two signs, and actually it's a great thing to mention here, but that facade, obviously with the construction of the residential building, that passageway has been opened up. You know, previously there Walgreens sat there, and so it's been opened up significantly. And so as part of our facade project, we actually did rebuild that facade entirely, and we will be bringing in an awning and giving that the consistent look and putting in signs for all of those retailers, which I don't think they ever had at the shopping center before.
Okay, great. Okay, that's all the questions I have.
And here's that facade, David, for you on the next page. So you
Great.
can see that Pizza Star sign at that same size on this long, you can see the facade in this image. It's a much longer facade, so it fits and it's allowable by code here. The one sign on this side, it's the opposite of Pizza Star, where Rita's actually has a much longer facade on the parking lot side and a very small facade facing this way. So again, if we just used this facade length, the Rita's sign would be much smaller. And that's what is triggering the relief request for that specific Rita's sign.
Right. Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. Just moving here, that was page 11. Sorry, I keep forgetting to mention these. Moving to the next slide, it's labeled here as 13. This is building E, so we're moving to the front buildings now. Again, wanted to show all of the signs in context, highlighting the green signs as previously approved. Bella, Suite 460, which will be a new retailer, 4 Elements, Dental Care, Dunkin'. But as you can see, maybe about 50% of the signs here do require relief. And that's because we have a lot of retailers with a very small amount of storefront. So again, to just keep that look consistent requires more variances than some of the other buildings. This is the same building, building E on the courtyard side. Again, the ones in green previously approved. And you can see it's the same retailers as the other side. One thing about building E worth mentioning, because it's a little bit of a unique condition, I'm going back one slide now. But if you remember the shopping center, Lily Pies actually for a long period of time had a sign on the front of building E. And we learned that because there's no frontage there, that sign is actually maybe not allowed, and so what we're doing is we're sort of trying to make that right now by coming in, getting the relief it needs to make that sign comply. And so that's one interesting case. We felt like, again, maintaining that sign, maintaining that presence for Lily Pies was important. It had been there for so long. And then also Bella Boutique on the courtyard side. So Bella had a sign on the courtyard side at that main sort of center walkway. Technically, they don't have any frontage there. So we're asking for a variance to bring that sign back. And then building F, this is the other front building. This is 2 retailers looking for relief. So Forever Young, which is a brand new med spa that just recently opened at the shopping center, and Bagel Nook. Again, Starbucks, Image Arts, Alpha Fit, Orvis, Pastiamo, those have all been approved administratively. And so Bagel Nook and Forever Young just have a little bit bigger logo. They have a lot of letters there, and limited frontage. So that's what's really driving the variance. And then this is just the courtyard side of that same building. So again, Forever Young and Bagel Nook are really the 2 retailers in building F looking for relief. I guess at this point, I'm prepared to move into the site signage. I'm happy to pause if there are any questions.
Are there other questions from board members or staff about the building signage? Okay,
Great.
go right ahead, Mr. Leeming.
Okay, thank you very much, Madam
We're
Chair.
on slide 17 now, moving to.
Yep, 17, moving to 18 now. And this image here is maybe like, well, what am I looking at? This is a bit of a surprise here. But what I wanted to do with the site signage is I wanted to sort of set the table a little bit with a lot of the conversations we had with staff over the months. At one point, the image that's in the top right here is a large, I would call pylon type sign at Plainsboro Plaza. And, there was discussion very early about, presence along North Harrison and gateway identity and signage and how do we curb appeal and all these things. And we kind of said, okay, let us think about that a little bit and think about the right way to approach that, given the code, but also given the signage that exists on site. And the sign in the middle of the screen here, just to remind everyone, this is the previously approved sign that will go in place of the sign at Walgreens that Justin spoke about. This is the sign that us and Avalon will be providing to identify Avalon and also continue to identify the shopping center. And so we said, we already have this family of sign coming to the shopping center. what if we took that same type of sign, but we're mindful of the other types of signs in and around Princeton? We were directed to one at 300 Witherspoon Street that, was this sort of shorter sign that had some logo or some retail, brand identity on it. It also had panels for identity. It had lighting. It had a nice base. It was a great identification sign, but it wasn't large. It wasn't something, I think someone might have been Derek who said, some of those signs belong out on Route 1. We don't have a lot of those signs here in the town of Princeton. Everything, the scale here is much smaller, it's much more intimate. And so we really tried to think about that and think about this sign in the center here. And scattered around are just some inspirational images. So moving to slide 19 now. This is a site plan to just, again, reorient everyone, but also identify the locations of the signs. So the signs on the screen in blue, we have down here by Walgreens, we have the previously approved Avalon and Princeton Shopping Center monument or identification sign. We also have the current existing shopping center identification sign at Valley Road, which, if I go back one slide, is this existing sign in the bottom left here, just to remind the board. Coming back to slide 19 now, we are asking for an additional monument or identification sign here at the entrance to where Nomad Pizza is. This is that third sign that Mr. Lesko referenced. And this is a shopping center identification sign, which we're also requesting, like some other signs, where that have some identity, brand identity, or names of operators. We are asking to incorporate names of retailers into this sign, and only this one sign, not the other two, just this one here. In addition to the signs along North Harrison, we also think, and one thing we've heard a lot recently, partially due to construction, but I think also partially due to the shopping centers getting a lot of new customers, believe it or not. And when people enter the shopping center, they don't always know where they're going right away. And sometimes it's difficult. If you're going to Ace Hardware for the first time, there's nothing telling you where Ace Hardware is. So we thought, as part of this application, it would be great to install and ask for relief to install what we're calling vehicular wayfinding signs. They were categorized as directory signs, but they're different from the directories that sit on site. The directories that sit on site are for pedestrians. They sit inside the courtyard. So once you've parked, once you get out, when I'm on site a lot, I oftentimes see people walk in and stop for a moment, try to figure out where they're going, and then they see a pedestrian directory and walk over to it and get oriented. So with these three signs, the goal is to help better direct car traffic. As people come in this entrance here and come to a main decision point, people come in this entrance off Valley Road, come to a major decision point. One of the things we are thinking a lot about now that the residential building is going in, right? I think everyone remembers the days where you could take this right and swing on back here and park over here and kind of get in and out a little bit easier. We really want people that are now coming in Valley Road to get comfortable taking this left, making your way around McCaffrey's. We feel like a third wayfinding sign somewhere in this vicinity to kind of let people know, keep going, right? Keep going to Ace Hardware, keep going to this key retailer, so that it brings them back to the Grover Park side and it gets more people back here. So I think everyone, at least I've witnessed, we've all probably witnessed this, a lot of folks love to come in here. This is obviously not open right now. It will be open hopefully very soon, but everyone loves to come in and take that right and park up front. So yes, it's meant to help orient and direct vehicles a little bit, but it's also, in our mind, help to provide awareness of who's where at key decision points to vehicular traffic. Moving to slide 20 now. And this is that design for that, what I'm going to call the green sign in my previous slide at the Nomad Pizza entrance. So this is that special sign. As you can see, if you remember, if I go back, if you remember what that Princeton Avalon sign looked like, We're trying to mimic that same exact language here and provide a sign that identifies the shopping center and also gives us the opportunity to identify retailers. The sign would be double-sided. Justin, that was a comment in your memo. This would be a double-sided sign. It would sit perpendicular to North Harrison and be visible from both sides. We'd like the opportunity to introduce retailers' names, text only. We would not be introducing brands. So again, similar to some of the signs around Princeton where office retailers or other retailers are on a sign, it's typically just text. It's just the name. There's no brand, not a lot of branding. And we would like, we were asking for relief to internally illuminate those names as well. This is not allowed in the current ordinance, internally illuminated signs. We actually prefer halo illumination. As you can see, the Princeton Shopping Center brand at the bottom is halo illuminated. All of the signs at the Princeton Shopping Center will be halo illuminated. However, these panels and the size of the text and the letters did not lend themselves to a halo illumination. And so that's why we're asking for that internal illumination to really help the sign pop, be legible, just look great and give the center some new identity and give our retailers some identity out on North Harrison.
Mr. Lehman, the illumination is just the lettering. Is that correct?
That's correct. That is correct. Just light would only come through on the letters. And then moving into the other, what I'll call 3 signs, or just to go back, the red signs here, the wayfinding signs. We have 2 types. This top one here is meant to be a very simple panel with letters and directional arrows, non-illuminated, just messaging, very simple messaging. Not confusing, not distracting, just simple messaging. This sign on the bottom, which is D2, this sign is meant to be directly at your terminus as you enter Valley Road. And we wanted this sign to be a little bit more special. People are coming in Valley Road. It's a sense of arrival. They've come to a key decision point. We wanted to, again, mimic that same sign language that you saw, the Princeton Avalon sign with the site identification sign. But again, we wanted to do a simple panel with messaging. And that was slide 21.
Ryan, sorry to
Please.
interrupt. I noticed there's a note on both of these messaging shown for reference only. And the question I have is, you have a lot more retailers than are shown, say, on this top one, this D1 and D3 sign. And I'm curious whether, well, first of all, whether you're representing that this is going to be the size of the text, regardless of what it says, or are you saying that you could add additional names and the text could be smaller? I don't know what the note means, messaging shown for reference only.
Yep, great question. Knowing that we're here tonight at our first meeting, we wanted to show a sign design, and we wanted to show you the maximum height, the maximum width. I think this sign, the messaging that you see here, I don't think we would want too many more names than what you see, because I think things would get a little bit too small and tough to read. And also, while it's not finalized, the way we're thinking of approaching this, because there are so many retailers at the shopping center, we're really looking at it from a somewhat of a hierarchy in what you can kind of consider anchor, junior anchor, larger retailer. And so the D2 sign, David, actually, it could be pretty realistic in that, you have McCaffrey's, the largest retailer at the shopping center, sitting at the top. You have Walgreens sitting here. You have Ace Hardware, Princeton Ballet, which a lot of people forget about. Princeton Ballet is a large partner of ours at the shopping center. Be great to get that name out there and let people know the ballet school is here. And some of these, Suite 140, Suite 510, Suite 460, those are vacant today. We do have some leases in place for those suites. We just didn't put their name on the sign yet, but those are also larger retailers at the shopping center. So there would be some hierarchy, and there would be some limiting. There'd be some threshold to limit. We're not going to put everyone on these signs. However, we do want to reserve the right, as long as we stay within these critical dimensions. Maybe the top sign has 6 in this image. Maybe it ends up having 7 at the end of the day, or it has 8. I don't think it would get to have 12 or 14 or 18. So that was the intent of the note, was to say, really, we're asking for the dimension of the sign here and the right to do the sign. This is the type of messaging we want to do. We might tweak it a little bit, which we can obviously will address with a sign permit before we do installation. But that was the intent.
Okay.
Ryan, could I ask a quick question?
Please.
I think, your comments about size, et cetera, of the basically the uses at the shopping center are right, but do you need that Princeton Shopping Center sign at the bottom? It strikes me as branding more than identification of any sort. You're already in the shopping center, so I'm not
Yep.
sure what purpose that serves.
Fair. I think it was just another moment for us to, in a way, to think about this sign as, again, people come in Valley Road and you have that great terminus view. One of the things we've always thought is that you're driving in and you're looking at the side of an office building. We've always thought we should do something here to give folks a sense of arrival. And so I'd say for us, it's less about branding, it's less about the advertising, and it's more about just giving folks a sense of arrival. That was the reason to incorporate it and give this sign a similar look and feel to the sign that we're proposing on North Harrison.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I do have a couple of other questions, but I want to give Pallavi a chance. Since she's
Yeah,
doing it.
Go ahead, Pallavi.
Thank you for the presentation, and it's clear that you've all put so much thought into this. I'm just curious. So I noticed, first of all, the font that you're using on the Princeton Shopping Center. The Princeton is in the same font as the Princeton University, and I'm just wondering if that's something you've already decided you would like to move ahead with. I know a lot of people do like the old signage and the font on the existing shopping center sign.
That's a great, that's a great,
Bye.
that's a great, I don't know that we,
I look at it every day.
Oh
our
yeah,
intent-
no, you're
yeah.
absolutely right. Yeah.
I don't know that our intent was to use the same font.
It is. It's Princeton Monticello. So
I'm going to try to scramble and open our style guide to see what we called it. Because I can tell you we didn't call it Princeton Monticello. So the intent, obviously we're not speaking about this in this application right now, but as part of the renovation and the center upgrades that we're doing, we do want to modernize the name a little bit.
Okay.
And so
that was the side question, and I understand, but you should also know there's some nostalgia about the shopping center, a lot of nostalgia perhaps, but and the existing font in the sign speaks to a lot of people.
Okay.
But my main question was just how you're thinking about the flow of traffic and the location of the sign. So if you're saying the Valley Road entrance is going to be the main entrance, wouldn't you want to have kind of the main lighted sign near there somewhere?
Well, I don't know if we think of Valley Road as the main entrance. We know it's a main entrance.
Okay.
It's a fair question. I don't think we thought of.
There's also, I think that Justin may be able to speak to this more, but the town is also reconsidering the traffic flow along Harrison, and they're doing a corridor study, or will be doing a corridor study, and so that may also affect how you think about the placement of the signs. But obviously, we don't have the results of that corridor study yet.
We did look at each entrance. I know traffic patterns are a little bit different right now, given everything going on over there.
Mhm.
But it does feel like a lot of folks do use this entrance here. And it was one that was kind of identified as an entrance that a lot of people come into because it's central. And I think that's probably what
It
drove
is.
us to
It
think about
is-
it that way.
It is central, but it's very narrow, and it's only accessible from vehicles traveling north on North Harrison.
Correct.
And so, and it's also mostly used as an entrance to get to Nomad Pizza, which is there, and then
Mhm.
the Bagel Nook.
Yeah. And it's a tricky spot because there are so many turning movements, cars pulling in and out of
Yeah,
those spaces, cars turning in. I think one must exercise some caution in terms of encouraging.
yeah.
entry.
So I'm just concerned about the traffic safety issues if the main lighted sign is there, if people think that's the main entrance. But if the lighted sign is purely informational, it could go perhaps at the Valley Road entrance. Did I say that correctly?
Yes.
I guess what I meant is if you wanted to mark the main entrance, it would make more sense to put it by the Valley Road entrance, which I think of as the main entrance.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that most people think of that as the major entrance. It's a lot more people will be using the entrance further south who live at Avalon. I think once that's opened up, that's going to be much heavier, obviously, even than it has been in the past. But yeah, right now that Valley Road entrance and exit is, frequently quite busy and even sometimes congested. David or Pallavi, were you finished with your? Sorry, David.
Yeah, I'm done. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, David.
So two kind of nitpicky questions, but I think they're important. The D1 sign that you had shown, Ryan, showed all arrows
Oh,
pointing.
I'm sorry, this one.
Yeah, all arrows pointing left. And in fact, some of the traffic is gonna want to go straight,
Correct.
go around
Yep.
the Avalon to get to the rear of the shopping center. And the question I have is whether you've given thought to how that would be indicated. For one thing, Ace Hardware is shown as a left arrow here, which is crazy.
We'd want it the other way.
Yeah, so I would like a little bit more thought given to how that sign should be organized to separate and clearly indicate which retailers one should proceed straight for and which ones you should turn left for. And then the other, which is an even pickier question, is for the sign D2, your bullet your leader on the site plan shows it lining up with the median of the Valley Road entrance, the center of that. And I think it should be shifted to the south so that it's really addressing the incoming traffic.
Yeah.
Good point.
Great. It's a great comment.
Mhm.
Yeah, neither of those nitpicky
No,
in my view. I think that, yeah, the direction, the arrows are really important, not to try to route everybody going to Ace Hardware all the way around
No.
the horn to get there. That is just going to add to
And it's not
traffic.
right. It's not obvious how the design would change in order to direct people going straight. In other words, do you group a couple of stores that are in the back
What I was gonna
with
suggest,
an
David.
arrow going straight and then the other ones with arrows going left? But we'd sort of have to look at it to feel, I'd have to look at it to feel really comfortable that it was clear and, met site planning needs.
I think as it relates, I don't know if it's appropriate if I respond or not, but I think if it relates to this sign, David, that you're talking about, this entrance, you come into
Yes.
a slight T. So I think the left and the right still make some sense. And so we would look at the messaging of this, and maybe to your point, we would group a few retailers. These 4 you go right, these 4 you go left, or we'd come up with some other really nice way to do it.
But it's not a wide enough sign to do it in the way that you have done it on D2. So even that's challenging. If you want to have
I think
the
you would,
arrows going right and left.
Yep.
So
I mean, you could,
I think it needs some real thought.
I can see that you might, right justify
That's what I was thinking.
the
Yeah,
names
maybe you
of
flip
the
some or something.
establishments to go and left justify for the right arrows. I mean, I don't know, but
I don't think we can design it on the fly.
no, we cannot. And
Unfortunately.
but it is it needs to be redesigned, and yeah. And I don't mean to get an answer for this right this minute, but one issue that was raised earlier was basically the font size, or the size of the lettering, and how many establishment store names might be on each side, whether it's 6 or 8 or 10, but not 12. And I don't know what the best practice industry standard or whatever, so I'm sure there are such things, but it would be helpful if we could establish some kind of minimum letter size or something. It would make me feel better about, down the road, not having a sign that's got so many store names on it that you just can't read them. And maybe that would, help Eden as well in negotiating to have that, limit imposed. So, well, I don't know whether it would help them or not, but my point is to make them really clear and legible for patrons. Julie Capizzoli.
Sorry, this is off the different from the font issue. I just wanted to know about materials and maintenance. Maybe I missed that, but what are they made out of?
All of the signs?
Yeah.
Most all the signs are metal. So all the retailer signs are metal. They're all channel letters, aluminum mostly. And then the site signs, same thing. They'd be aluminum in a metal cabinet, if you will, and then they would sit on a stone or a brick base. There'd be some posts, footings in the ground to secure them, but mostly, high quality, very durable, I'd say rich materials. We want the signs to look beautiful at the end of the day and mimic the new look of the shopping center. And then maintenance, we would obviously, take care of these signs and clean them appropriately. We'd repair them, God forbid if it was hit or damaged in any way, we'd obviously repair them and keep them up.
Okay, thanks.
You're very welcome.
I'm going to put that
down. So unless there are any further questions right now, let's see the rest of your slides and hear the rest of what you have to say, Mr. Leeming.
Thank you. And believe it or not, I think I was at the end. Yep. The site sign was the last sort of package here, so you all jumped in right at the right time.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Any other questions then for Mr. Leeming before we move on to Mr. Doherty?
I'm sorry, I do have one more question.
Sure, yes, go ahead.
Which is about the D3 sign. It's not clear to me which way it's oriented.
Sure.
Ryan, I know you had talked about it just sort of being to help people know to continue on. It also is very close to what we hope will be a rear entrance to the shopping center. So that would suggest possibly a different orientation. I want to know if you have a sense of how that sign would be oriented and whether it would be, well, yeah, I'll let you respond to that.
Yeah, sure. So when we looked at the site wayfinding sort of program here, we tried to not add too many signs. We didn't want to have a lot of them, but we did feel like folks coming in Valley Road, taking that left, driving around, at some point, they might need they're new to the shopping center, they might need a reminder, keep going for Ace Hardware, keep going for whomever. So that was the original intent when we started this. We did start thinking about this about a year ago. So that was the intent, David.
Yeah.
I think to your inquiry, it may work, could work either way, but that was our intent when we started this conversation, was just giving people a reminder, keep going and having some more tenant identification.
Yeah. I guess if that's really the only intent, I sort of feel like it's not in the right location, because virtually all of the traffic for the rear tenants actually wants to come down directly alongside the building. That's that one-way drive that hugs buildings B and C. Yeah. And so, if I were placing a sign that was just intended to help people who had come in at Valley Road to know how to get to their ultimate destination, I would put a sign telling, at the end of that drive, telling them to turn right here instead of something further on, kind of floating in no man's land that I think wouldn't necessarily be the right place for a sort of sign to indicate you're still going the right way, or anyway.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think that's
interesting
really
counterpoint.
I totally agree with that, and certainly the way I get back there to Ace or any of the other places back there, I think it is the way most people
I agree with that too.
circulate. And
Very interesting.
And when that road is there, connecting the parking lot with Terhune, one could argue a directional sign would be worthwhile having there as well. So
Right, but that would be more like sign type
Yeah.
D2.
And that would have to be
Exactly.
We want to
oriented
direct
differently.
people in two different
yes,
directions.
oriented totally differently. Yeah, correct. Right. So a couple of other questions. First, Mr. O'Donnell, Owen O'Donnell, and then Claudia Wilson Anderson.
Thanks, Mr. Lemming. Is the D1 sign the only sign that's going to be internally illuminated, or are we talking D2 and D3 as well?
No, just this, what we're calling the sort of the large identification sign. This is the only illuminated sign.
That's the only illuminated sign. Okay, thank you very much.
And what do you expect for the illumination to be on all night long, or what kind of timing do you expect?
No, so signs at the shopping center, the signage at the shopping center goes on about, I'm going to say somewhere around it goes on around sundown. So I think they start coming on around 4 p.m.-ish now. And they stay on, I think our latest retailer closes about 10 p.m. And so they stay on for a few hours after that, and they go off between midnight, between midnight and 1 a.m. And then they stay off, and then we have some retailers opening as early as 6 a.m. So they start to come on around that time, about, sun up. And then just before sun up. And then they go off a few hours later around 8 in the morning when the sun is up. So those are the approximate, lighting hours for signs at the center. We'd follow the same program.
Okay.
and not be on all night.
Claudia?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I want to say, first of all, I think it looks beautiful, what you're doing.
Thank
Looks
you.
A
Thank
lot
you.
nicer. It kind of has a Southern Florida feeling to it as the outdoor center, and it's nice. So as a resident that recently moved back here, I remember the old days, and this is a vast improvement. In terms of traffic flow, we haven't talked about stop signs or exit signs, but I know coming in the Valley Road exit, it gets a little bit confusing with cars turning and signage saying you're not going to stop or somebody is stopping. With the new traffic flow, have you reconsidered anything as it relates to yield signs, traffic stop signs, or exit signs?
Thank you for the kind words, and a quick answer to your question is, as part of this application and what we presented here, we did not think about any of that. But that's not to say we can't or work with the right folks in town to look at that separately. But we didn't study anything related to those types of signs as part of this application.
Thank you. I have a follow-up question to that, but for later on. Justin Lesko and then Alvin McGowan.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. One thing that I did not mention earlier, that some of the board members probably know, and Eden certainly knows, is that the municipality has engaged a consultant to look at our municipal signage, to consolidate the township and the borough, and just to modernize our signage practices in general. Now, I almost hesitate to bring that up because we're so early in that process that we truly don't know what it's going to lead to. What types of signs, any of these signs, for example, they all might be allowed, they all might be prohibited, they might not be addressed, and we'd be in the exact same place we are now. So I don't want to, necessarily defer to that just off the bat when you're making your decision on these applications or on these separate signs. But I do bring that up to say that there's clearly a time aspect for the facade signs. Like I said before, some stores have signs right now. Others next door that are doing business either don't have signs or they have temporary ones. So clearly there's a timing. Those can't wait necessarily for the end of, until that study. Or at least it would be a practical difficulty if they did. When it comes to the other signs, though, the directional ones or the identification one, those do not necessarily have that same timing concern. So I would just, offer up to the board to keep that in mind after we hear from the planner and when we're discussing later.
Great. Thanks, Justin. Alvin?
Just by way of comment, after listening to the question from Ms. Wilson Anderson and the question of whether there's been any consideration of traffic flow, particularly by Valley Road, you do realize there is a sign there now that says income traffic doesn't stop.
Correct.
And, so there has to be some, I would think, adjustment made it that interesting. So that was my comment there.
If I may, and I'm going to pull my screen back up. I was actually looking at our style guide versus you had me curious about the Princeton University font. So I was going down a rabbit hole on that one. If I may go back to this, I unfortunately have some I'm not a traffic engineer. I don't swear to be, but I unfortunately have some experience with this at other properties that we own. And this entrance is very short. And so I don't know what we can do there without, a much bigger study or type of thing. So that was what I meant, by my comment of, right, with this application, we didn't look at that. We're not looking at that as part of this. It is a very short approach coming into the shopping center, which is probably why when the shopping center was built or way before we owned the shopping center, there was some city engineer, traffic engineer, et cetera, that said you actually can't have a stop sign here because it will then back up into the intersection. So there's probably a reason why that was done. I'm not an expert on that, but I think I have a little bit of experience there. So that's probably why that condition exists.
Mm-hmm.
Less than ideal, but probably the best of the available alternatives.
Yeah. So are there any other questions for Mr. Leeming before we move on? Okay. Thank you, Ryan Leeming. Appreciate it. Don't go anywhere.
I'm here.
So there you go, Mr. Dougherty. We should qualify you first. Mr. Letizia?
Yes. So, Mr. Doherty, let's begin by having you tell the board your educational professional qualifications, please.
Certainly. My education at Rutgers Blousing with a master's in city and regional planning, a concentration in development and redevelopment, certification in public policy. My licenses are good and current, PP as well as AICP. I testify in this capacity on a weekly and daily basis. I've actually testified before this board, I believe last year. I testify. I've always been accepted as a professional. I work with APA New Jersey as a professional development officer, present at the League of Municipalities State Redevelopment Conference, and actually just was announced the Distinguished Emerging Planner for 2024 with the APA.
I hail from Mr. Doherty as an expert in land use planning.
Congratulations. We accept your qualifications.
So, Mr. Doherty, please provide your views on whether we have met the criteria for the grant of the variances being sought as part of this application.
Certainly. I do want to just mention, I think Mr. Leeming really did a thorough job really walking everyone through the sign. It does sound like a lot of relief on paper, because there is a substantial amount of signage and the intricate details of the sign ordinance here. For purposes of this application, as many of us know, it's one tax lot block 7401 lot 1.011. It's a little over 23 acres. It's been developed as a shopping center since 1954, as everyone knows. And in the intro, there is a big push to revitalize this. So we have a lot happening here. The site contains multiple buildings, including the new Avalon 200 unit project that's coming along nicely. And the site, as we just were discussing, has undergone significant facade renovations in accordance with the 2021 and 2023 approvals. So we're kind of circling back to that, the overall upgrade and renovation of the site. When we look at the plan for what we're here for tonight, the plan is simply 4 signs. As we discussed, there's 24 facade signs. We have 3 directory signs, 1 identification sign, and the facade improvements approvals required, to remove and replace the signs. As Mr. Leeming kind of really walked through, there's been a very thoughtful approach to these facade signs that kind of strike a balance, with the overall aesthetics and continuity of the site. As we discussed, the facade signs, we're asking for over 35% of the store frontage. And when we look at that, what otherwise would be happening here, some signs would be fairly larger, or some would be smaller. And what we're proposing here, though, asking for relief, really does kind of draw that seamless continuity and visual appeal throughout the shopping complex and center here. So we are seeking some relief for that 35% of store frontage. And as we discussed just a moment ago, though some of the signs could be larger, we are in some areas under that 35% allowable percent here for some of these signs. Again, we're looking for cohesion and continuity throughout the shopping center for that identity and sense of place. We are seeking directory signs for the quantity. We have 4 existing plus 4 proposed, so we have 8. you know, and we really look at this for safety and wayfinding. Directory sign area, as we discussed early on, ranging from 27 square feet to 96 square feet. What's permitted is the 8 square feet. When we look at this, as we just saw in great detail, it's to list multiple tenants and you know, have that availability for the directory signs. The directory sign height, 8 versus 5 permitted. Really, when we look at this, it's for safety, visibility. It's not really provided for a decorative based directory signs as much as the building facades are more of a decorative feature. These are really directory signs. So we're asking for that height. We have identification sign and the quantity. We have 2 existing. We're proposing an additional. So we would total have 3 on site versus the 1 permitted. When we look at the identification sign to provide roadside recognition for the tenants, many of which are not visible as we discussed and we're familiar with the site. There's a courtyard, there's buildings behind buildings. So we are asking for an additional identification sign. And when we look at the existing signs, you know, really at entry points of the shopping center, but they don't really identify the tenants. So we're asking for that purpose as well. The identification sign, as we discussed, is internally lit. Only the letters are internally illuminated, not the panel, as we discussed. The goal here is really to make it look nice, seamless, and have that aesthetic appeal. When we look at the sign relief as we've been going through it, from a planning standpoint, this type of relief here is what we refer to as a lower tier relief. It's that flexible C2 balancing test for a better zoning alternative. The benefits of the application as a whole, which is substantially, they outweigh the detriments here, which is what we refer to as a pull-in case. I do want to make reference that when we talk about the zone, the SC shopping center district, you know, the master plan really has called out the 23 master plan for the economic element, specifically references shopping center and says, you know, for the revitalizing the shopping center is a top economic priority here. So, you know, this is really what that effort is to revitalize that. And the land use constantly changes shopping centers. And I think, you know, we've done a good job to recognize the issues with shopping centers, malls, and the likes of that, from the .com booms to COVID. You know, these centers and amenities and retail centers have really taken hit across the state, across the country. From a planning standpoint, putting that population, the Avalon project there would certainly help to keep the center viable. But certainly the upgrades, the facade, and the signage overall package, giving a fresh look, certainly would help in aiding in that and keeping it competitive and that sense of place for the community. When we look at this project overall, the packages and the sign, the project benefits, again, as a whole, we believe would promote Purpose A, the municipal land use law. The project as a whole promotes the general welfare because it entails upgrades and renovation to the shopping center and really is spot on with the master plan objective to help the center, and I quote, become a thriving commercial hub for the growing residential community of the area. Good signage is essential to ensure effective retail viability of the center and have that competitive edge and fresh look for the tenants in the building. We have Purpose G. The project promotes the planning goal to provide for a variety of uses in appropriate locations, because the entire sign package, as we just saw, is tasteful, cohesive, and provides efficient unifying elements to the site, along with added safety, wayfinding, and visibility. Certainly, we can look at that as providing for a variety of uses. Again, you know, with the tenants and potential tenants to come in the future for the site. Certainly my favorite here, and I think many of us can certainly agree, Purpose I for the project and the sign package promotes a desirable visual environment. The entire sign package is tasteful, classy, as Mr. Lehman said, intimate. You know, certainly I think we advance Purpose I for desirable visual environment. It really does evoke a positive aesthetic and cohesive image and identity of the shopping center. And the master plan says the building and storefronts look tired and they need an updating. So these sign packages will certainly help to do that here. Purpose M for the municipal land use law, the project promotes the planning goals for efficient use of land, because all the signs, both building ground signs, will integrate nicely into the site and the structures that are on the site, and really help kind of tie in and put the bow on the extensive renovation projects that have been happening here at the shopping center. When we look at the potential detriments here with the sign package and the relief that we're seeking, it's my professional opinion that none of the relief, if granted, will create impacts of substantially adverse nature. the facade signs are below the 24 square foot threshold that's shown in the table that we were just looking at before. The facade signs are proportional to the approved signs that were already there. And I think that's really what we're looking for, is to kind of have the proportional continuity and identity. We certainly don't want certain signs to be larger and some smaller. It becomes kind of, in my opinion, visually unattractive and you know, kind of confusing. When we look at the overall directory signs, they're really simply visual cues and navigation that aids to the facility. It's sorry, to facilitate free flow in traffic. And as we just discussed, there might be better locations. And I think when we look at the overall land use procedure here, it's that integrated process to kind of really strike that balance of where, and you know, the board sees fit and the professionals here. So from a directory signs and the cues for navigation, I think, you know, there might be some room, as we just discussed, a better location, you know, or, you know, in our opinion, you know, the location might work for the reopening of the road. When we look at the road signs, they're not excessive given the extremely long street frontage. This is a fairly large site. Again, it's a little over 23 acres, and the frontage of the center. When we look at the relief itself, I don't believe the zone plan will be impaired with the sign project. It certainly is in line with the goals and intent of the master plan for this site and the shopping center. And as your planner just testified to, or mentioned, I'm sorry, you know, there is a potential for an overhaul on the overall sign package within the community. So I certainly don't believe this sign package here impairs that. I think it really does strike a balance with what the master plan is calling out for the shopping center. And as we just saw, it really does, you know, kind of tie everything in here. The application really, when we look at it, is simply for signage that will continue this positive transformation to the site. When we look at the relief, that C2 balancing the benefits substantially outweigh the detriments here, a better zoning alternative. I think we can confidently say that this site is unique. There's a lot going on here, and certainly the signs are a critical component to this overall shopping center. And I certainly think that when we look at this, the relief is a positive with little to no detriment, and the statutory criteria for relief would be met, and approval would otherwise be warranted. Again, I just want to emphasize that, you know, we're here for would otherwise be sign relief for a complete overhaul and an upgrade of the shopping center. So we're trying to strike that balance, and you know, with the board's recommendations and the interactive process, I think we can certainly do that. But with relation to that facade signage, particularly because there's 24 of them, we are trying to strike a cohesive balance. So some of those relief, though the frontage is small, it is proportional with the overall site and identity and continuity. I think that's really important when we look at that. With that, I'll stop, open for any cross or comments, concerns, or questions.
Thank you. David Cohen?
Excuse
Oh,
me, Madam Chair, I just
sorry.
want to correct a couple facts. In terms of the directory signs, we're seeking 3 additional directory signs, so for a total of 7 on the site. And in terms of the height of those signs, we're proposing 6 feet, and the ordinance allows up to 5. So that's the extent of the variance. No problem.
Okay.
6 feet for one, just for one of them, Tom, right?
Excuse me, the one on street, there's
6
one.
feet for
That's
just one.
correct. Yes.
Mr. Cohen?
Yeah, I had a question. I think this is for staff. Whether our sign ordinance has specific provisions for the shopping center as a sort of unique facility in the municipality, or whether the shopping center signs are just governed by general commercial sign requirements in the former township. I don't remember if it's Derek.
Yeah, there
You
is.
have to-
Thank you, Madam Chair. There is a specific section. There's 3 categories. As of right, I think, which gives you 4 square feet of a maximum sign. And again, it's based on a percentage of the facade. Then there's a middle category, which gets you up to like 6 feet or 8 feet. And then there's the design review category, which requires a site plan, which staff utilizes an administrative waiver process to do that. So I'm just going to say that it's overly complicated and burdensome, and I'm happy that the town is looking at redesigning the existing signage codes, and hopefully it'll help everyone out. So
I can attest. Yes, it's burdensome.
So just to be triple clear, there is not a separate set of criteria for the shopping center zone.
there is specific section in the table of for the shopping center, as there is for all zones. The B
But-
zone,
But it has the same,
it relates to there, it is specific to them because it relates to an identification sign. They get 64 square feet, then they get the 3 facade signs, and there's freestanding signs which really don't work with their layout. So it is kind of specific to them.
okay. The reason I'm asking this question, is that this board actually got in a little bit of trouble a couple of years ago for granting variances because we thought the ordinance was bad. We're supposed to base variances on the planning proofs. And we're supposed to work with the existing ordinance, not try to rewrite it ourselves. And this relates to the comment that Justin made, about whether to wait, for the rezoning. But I first of all, I want to say, I think I'm 100% in support of the facade sign variances. I think the rationale is perfect and they look great. And I also like the design of the other signs, although I have some of the questions about placement and, specific things. But I just, we could talk about if the shopping center didn't have its own unique set of sign regulations, we could say, well, it's different than all the other commercial properties in the former township. And that's the basis for making variances having to do with the directory sign. But I've got to believe that when the ordinance was written for directory signs and it was focused on pedestrian directory signs, not vehicular ones, that there was an intention behind that for the council that passed those ordinances. And I'm just a little worried, and maybe Jerry, you want to comment on this, but that we're on a little bit of a slippery slope by granting those variances for the directory signs and the number of ID signs, because we do have several ID signs.
Yeah, I'm not concerned about it. I think it's really so different from that case that you appropriately pointed out, David, where we were just went out of our way to basically approve something which was a significant change from what the zoning permitted. Here, and signage variances are granted all the time. I don't think it's a problem. Certainly for the facade signs, for the project identification signs and the sign and the directory signs, there's a little bit more of a concern, but I think the board is well within its power to approve them if it so choose.
Okay. And Madam Chair, if I might jump in.
Yeah, please, Justin, go ahead.
Thank you. And I certainly agree with our board attorney. I also
Mhm.
agree with many of the things that Councilman Cohen said. So I might just be jumping the gun a little here. And Jerry, again, feel free, as always, jump in if you disagree or want to clarify anything. But we instructed the Edens to come in with all these signs in one application. So that is certainly, we instructed them to do that. That being said, part of the reason was because your options as a board really are, you can approve outright, you can deny outright, but you can also approve some variances, but not all, which would effectively approve some signs, but not others. And then obviously the fourth option is also to approve, with conditions, which is, more so what normally happens. That being said, the way I look at this application is somewhat differently than the way Mr. Doherty testified to, where I don't see it all as one thing. I broke it up into the 3 signs, 3 types of signs buckets, if you will, because I think they are three very different things with different arguments to the positive and the negative, some stronger than others. In addition to those outside factors, like I mentioned earlier, of and in my report of should there be an ordinance fix on some of these signs rather than a zoning, a variance fix on some of the others. So I think when it sounds like we obviously still have public comment and maybe some more questions. But when the board does decide to start discussing which way they might go on this, just keep in mind those four pathways.
Yeah, and if I could jump in, I agree with everything that Justin said. But we do have to look separately at the facade signs, the monument sign, which raises questions because of where it's proposed to be located in the place where there are always traffic difficulties. And the directory signs. And David, I think it's probably right that this was the concept back in the day this was for pedestrians, but it seems to me it's capacious enough that it could include vehicular signage for vehicles rather than pedestrians. But again, that's a choice. I think you have certainly much more flexibility with respect to the directory signs and the monument sign.
So I'll just make one more comment, which is in terms of the internal illumination of the ID sign. I think that is the most tasteful. I'm going to call it a silhouette sign, where it's not a bright illuminated panel with dark lettering on it, but rather it's an opaque panel with just the letters being illuminated. I think we want to keep the size of the sign down a little bit. That means the font is small. That means you can't do halo illumination.
Right.
And I think this is the next best design alternative. I think it's the best design alternative given the criteria that I would like to see, applied to that sign. So I do think, with all the comments that I had earlier about the directory sign placement and graphic design for communication of what we want to communicate, I'm not ready to approve them tonight. But, because I think we need to see the redesign and the additional information. But I'm very comfortable with the facade signs, and in general, I like the other signs. I just wanted to be sure we weren't treading on thin ice.
Right.
Can I make a suggestion in terms of that issue? Again, if the board is willing to grant the variances for the directory signs and the ID sign, is perhaps you can establish a committee with staff to review the final plans for those signs, and then we could, as well as the location, because obviously there's different opinions about where those signs should be located. That might be another way to approach that, instead of us having to come back to the full board. That's all. But if you want us to come back to the full board with more information on those, we can do it. But it's like
it's this
trying to
sort
design by committee. We throw out a design and then you're going to say, well, do this or do that. It's tough to work under those conditions. That's all.
Understood. Sometimes the landscape committee veers a little bit into the signage and circulation realm. I'm wondering if the committee itself and the board and our attorney and planner would be comfortable with the landscape committee looking at the directional signage, not the ID signage. I don't think.
I personally would
Thoughts?
I'd be more comfortable with it coming back to the board, because if it was a committee, I think we probably have as part of a condition relating to the committee that if they can't be in agreement, it's going to come back to the board anyway. And I think the board should be looking at that.
Pallavi, thanks, Jerry.
And
Pallavi?
before
Jerry,
we
I'm
move
sorry,
on-
Justin, you first and then Pallavi. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Jerry.
and I would agree with Jerry on that, with the only exception being if the board was able to come to some sort of consensus tonight on just about everything but one thing related to those signs. So, and I'm not sure if the board's going to be able to do that. So, you know,
Right.
I would kind of agree with Jerry again.
Okay. All right. Good. Pallavi?
I just wanted to clarify the which signs would be lighted and which are not lighted. So the facade signs above the retailers are backlit.
Halo.
Is that correct?
A halo
But
light.
the directory signs are not lit.
Correct.
Correct.
So if someone is driving around at night, they don't have very good visibility for those directional signs.
Well, we would use what's in the,
Or you-
we would use what's called, I'm gonna mess it up. It's a type of lettering that's high contrast. So it's actually
Okay.
somewhat visible if there's ambient light, right? The shopping
Yeah.
center lights are on and the shopping
Okay.
center is very well lit. It's not meant to be, they're not meant to be internally illuminated signs. They're meant to be
Okay.
simple, not confusing. So if there's ambient light, the vinyl and the type of decal and the type of coloring of the letter is meant to like almost reflect a little bit. I don't mean reflect in the sense of reflect, but it's almost meant to like pick up ambient light and contrast against that. So we use it commonly in
Okay.
a lot of shopping centers, and we sort of often get into this conversation where someone's like, well, should we just illuminate it? And it's like, we can, but there's no power nearby, and that means XYZ and this and this. So all right, let's go with the sort of the, it's not called reflective vinyl. I'm blanking on the industry
Okay.
term,
I
but we
I think the main thing there is just to consider, in addition to exactly the directions that are printed on the sign, the location with regard to any ambient lighting and glare, just to make it. The other question is with regard to the lighting on the shopping center and retailer identification signs. Is the current sign that's there at the corner of Valley and Harrison lit?
it's externally illuminated, like
It's
a lot
externally, so
of the
there's a
facade signs
spotlight
were.
against it. Okay.
Yeah, there's a few signs down low that shine up and illuminate the sign.
Okay. And so are you proposing to replace that with something that's internally lit?
The existing sign at Valley Road.
Yes.
Yeah, actually, we are thinking about maintaining the size and characteristics of that sign and upgrading it, but not not changing the height in any way or the size of it in any way, just upgrading it, kind of fitting within the existing sign that works there.
Okay. I guess I'm asking because my other concern is just the glare from those signs on Harrison Road for people who may be across the street. I'm not sure if there's any residences or if those are just office buildings across the street.
Residences. There's a
residences.
small, I think there's a small office building on the corner. The road I'm blanking on, but I think Justin mentioned it in his opening statement.
For that existing shopping center sign, it's the office building. There are no residences across from that.
Keep in mind one point to that to clarify, and you probably couldn't see it on the plan I had on screen because I had a big dot showing the location, but in the application materials, that sign is perpendicular to North Harrison. So any light would be going sort of up and down North Harrison. It wouldn't be shining outwards towards the street.
Okay.
The other thing too to mention for the board's benefit, the materiality of that sign. I apologize, Julie, I didn't mention it when you asked me about materials. But the sign names themselves, we're actually going to utilize what's called a day-night acrylic. So it's actually an acrylic that is a little bit tinted. So during the day, it reads black. And then at night it would glow, but it would still have like a little bit of a tint on it. So the light it wouldn't be as if the light was shining through glass, so to say. It would filter the light a little bit. And that helps with glare, that helps with reflectiveness, that just helps tone it down a little bit.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that.
Sure.
Mr. Cohen?
Yeah, I just wanted to make one more comment about the directory signs, which is that I do find the planning testimony that they're going to enhance safety as a real thing. I was just at the shopping center today trying to leave, and I had incoming traffic that couldn't decide which lane to be in because they didn't know whether they wanted to turn right or left. I think that's a common thing. And I think that having this directory signage will be a big safety upgrade. And so I just wanted to get that on the record in terms of supporting that variance.
I agree with that. And one thing that just I keep coming back to in my head, and I know that this is not, well, it's part of what we're dealing with tonight. What I'm thinking about is the usefulness of this sign, not only for these signs, not only for people in cars, but also for people on foot and on bikes. It won't be too long in the future when there will be so many more visitors to this center, some who live right there, or, the next lot over or across Terhune, who will be on foot or on bike, and including kids and older people. And so just having, seeing the signs, the directional signs and the facade signs, I feel like they all will be useful for, beyond just for drivers. But I also feel like it won't be long before the town, I don't know whether this would come back to the board or not, but before someone needs to be looking at a very comprehensive set of crosswalks and signage and other things that make this center and this residential hub as well truly safe and appealing for pedestrians and bikes.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm throwing that out there because I don't know whether that work will come back to our board, and if it does, maybe one of the signs that's on tonight's the illuminated sign maybe comes back with that, or whether all of that other planning for mobility will be dealt with administratively. Justin, can you help me with that, or
Sure.
Dan?
Yep, certainly. As was mentioned before, I think by Pallavi, our engineering department is working on that study of all the way from the canal up to where North Harrison forks over to Ewing.
Yeah, but that's just on Harrison Street, right?
That's just on Harrison.
I'm talking about internal to the shopping center and between it and, I'm sorry, I cut you off before you were finished.
No, please clarify. Yeah.
But I definitely mean like that within the shopping center and the connections between the shopping center and the obvious, bike and ped. I mean, of course, people come down Valley Road and Harrison and Terhune already, but once the Alice and Avalon and both Avalons and Pearl are all fully open and occupied, I just anticipate, way more, in a good way, circulation and business happening in this center. And I just want to understand when the work that makes that looks carefully at those various types of mobility and how to make it, how to retrofit what's there and design the intersections that aren't in place yet, specifically the new road connecting with the parking lot. You know, how all of that work is, who's going to be doing all of that work? Does it come back to the board? Is it something that we should be keeping in mind in any way when we're looking at the directional signage or the ID signs?
And
Not
I think the short answer to that question is no, because everything would be speculative at this time. Anything that were to change on the shopping center property would come back to the board, most likely, you know, as an application for development. If it were, you know, any major thing, any new rerouting the road to make a new building or anything like that. It's a unique property in the sense that, you know, there's the SC zone on it. It's not like a, you know, there's 50 parcels or hundreds of parcels or anything like that. The zoning is almost unique to this one parcel or one or two parcels now. But as we all know, the underlying zoning is limiting just in terms of design. What is not limiting, or I should say is less limiting, is that there still is an area in need of redevelopment designation over the whole center. And as we know from some of the other redevelopment plans in town, going back to, you know, Heinz Plaza and those buildings, there's a lot more leeway in a discussion with the developer and the town to make changes, you know, kind of physical changes in an area, you know, under an area in need of redevelopment with a redevelopment plan. Now, that being said, there are, you know, that's not being discussed right now. So that's why I say it's just kind of speculative, but that area in need of redevelopment is there. Redevelopment plan is certainly not there right now for, you know, basically anything on the shopping center outside of the Avalon building that's already being built.
Okay.
And Louise, if I could just follow up on what you said, if there's something that could be done to establish crosswalks, especially on the west side of the shopping center and the road right next to the shopping center. I mean, there are people crossing between cars all the time. They're watching their phones, and it's really dangerous. And I don't know what could be done. I don't know if anything can be done about it, but certainly we're thinking about.
Yeah, and Justin, can you talk at all, or maybe anybody else who has a sense of this, the time frame for finishing the study of Harrison and what changes might be, when we might know that, which could be helpful in the talking about the illuminated sign. David?
I believe there's a presentation to council on Monday.
Wow. Okay. You might want to come to that, Mr. Leeming.
I was going to ask, is it, it's public? Is it public?
Oh,
I
yeah.
assume it is.
It's
Hybrid.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, that's good to know. Thank you. Mr. Doherty, do you have any thoughts about the size of lettering on the directional signs? Any like best practice, you know, safety, guided by safety and not making people slow down and squint?
Well, I will say, you know, you could have fairly big letters. You know, I think contrast and legibility is important. You can have big letters, but if the contrast that isn't there, you know, it doesn't matter how big they're going to be. If there's foliage that's growing higher, there's a lot to it. But for purposes of you know, the size and scale of the lettering, I would like to say that, you know, I do believe a committee would help kind of, you know, flush that out. It really is hard to design things in the dark without, you know, and having to come back and do this, you know, though we like it and enjoy it. That's why we're all here. I will say, you know, I'm not a traffic planner. I would kind of, you know, say that I do know Justin. I went to school with him. He's a really good planner, as you guys know. And there's a lot of good consulting firms out there as well. But for purposes of the site and the safety control, and overall what was just discussed, I think we have to look at this holistic, that you have an applicant in the overall site. It's near and dear to the community. Applicants able and willing. We do have Grove Park right behind it, residential. Safety is paramount in any community. So from safety controls, speed bumps, crosswalk hatchings and that regards, I think there's a lot that can be done. And I certainly think when we look at the applicant and the overall site, we certainly don't want the patrons to be fearful or feel like they're dodging cars. And in that regards, I would say confidently that you have a center here, an applicant that would certainly want to see the success and be loved by the community. And with the increased population, when we see that, we typically see cars start to slow down because it's not really auto dominant in that regards. They do have to share with the pedestrian. So putting that population in here, kind of having that anchor on both sides with the residential and the park there. I think when we look at this, I think you're going to be in good hands. With a lot of your concerns, but visibility and signage is certainly important. It is a big site. It's a unique site, as was just discussed. Kind of has that Florida outside campus feel to it. It's unique. There's a lot of direction you can go, but for signage and sizing letters, visibility is key. Contrast, illumination.
Yeah, and I'm sorry to cut you off, but
Yeah.
I'm just talking for. I think those signs showed. Was it 7 or 8 stores on a, and if with arrows pointing in each direction, I'm thinking of the one that was right at Valley Road. Can we bring up the slide that's got that? Sorry, I don't want to
It's a big
spend
site.
too
It's a
much
lot
time on this,
going
but just
here, yeah.
the directional sign that has right and left arrows and that one. So there are six stores on each side. I can see how we might permit 7, but not 8. I can see how we might permit 8, but not 12. I just want to make sure that I think a point that Mr. Cohen brought up earlier, that we aren't approving an overall size of the sign and then risking sometime down the road, 5 or 10 years from, there's so many, and this would not be in the shopping center's interest, obviously, but there's so many stores identified that people just can't read and digest it, quickly. Mr. Leeming, if you want to address that, or if Mr.
Yeah,
Cohen, if
happy
you
to.
have any thoughts about that from an architectural perspective, I'd be happy to hear that. I just don't want it for there to just be carte blanche to put as much on there as you could possibly fit.
Be
See what
happy
I'm
to
saying?
address. Yeah, and I may have said it earlier. If I didn't, I apologize. But on this D2 sign, this would be our intent.
6 and 6.
This is if you think about the hierarchy and the size of the retailers at the center.
Yeah.
Everyone listed here in the suites. I have vacant suites listed here because the size of those suites are such that it creates a hierarchy where it gives us a good threshold to say, sorry, but anyone over this square footage has rights to this sign.
Okay.
And it works in a good way where, McCaffrey's, Ace Hardware, like certain retailers are allowed to kind of go, it directs people accordingly. Because I think to your point, I think if we were to start to think about how to put more names, to accommodate too many folks, then the sign does not work anymore.
Right. So you would be comfortable with the condition that limits the number of establishments identified on these directional signs.
I mean, if that's something the board is willing to throw out, I mean, I will say, and just looking at the sign here again, I centered the 6 and 6. I centered them here, right? So
Mhm.
there's still a little bit of room on the sign, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
So
Mm-hmm.
I think at the end of the day, our intent was to show a sign design that we felt fits the character, right? And it kind of
Mhm.
fits within the language of the center and provides an opportunity for wayfinding for select retail, not for everyone. Because then that sign does not function, or B, it gets way too large, right? It just
Mhm,
becomes
mhm.
way too large.
So, Mr. Lehman, with respect to that sign,
This one at the top here.
no, the
Oh,
one
the
you were
big-
just
I'm
referring to,
sorry. Yeah.
a total of 14,
Come on.
That would be 2 more than shown.
7 and 7.
Yeah, or 8 and 8, right? Because there's a little bit of white space here and white space
Oh, all
here.
right.
So it looks like the same letter height that we're depicting here roughly to scale would fit that. But again, I'd also be happy to David's point earlier. I mean, this one I don't think we're going to put a lot more thought into, but the other two and sort of specifically pinpointing who's right, who's left, who's where, who's straight, etc. Be happy to, submit another revision back to this board or offline, however you want to get, however you want to handle that. I'd be happy to do that and give a little bit more detail, or if there's a condition or, we won't, it has to be reviewed again before installed, etc. Be happy to do that. Happy to get these right.
Yeah.
But we're not, sorry, I'm talking forever, but we're not looking to say, we're showing you 6 and 6, and really we're going to put a sign up that has 20 and 20 or something like that. That
Yeah,
just would
and
not
then
work.
that's exactly what I was trying to get at.
That would just not work.
We'll talk a little bit more about it, I expect, although I know nobody wants to beat it to death.
Madam Chair, if I
Mr.
may.
Weissman, and then Freddie Perlmutter, and then Nat Bodegheimer. Dan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to provide some clarification, and this doesn't necessarily apply here, just to provide some overall guidance. Federal Highway Administration provides a manual for uniform traffic control devices. It's really the guide for designing road signs. In there, they have requirements for lettering height for roadway signs. Those are typically 6 inches. They may be reduced to 4 inches, but 6 inches is the typical height of a roadway sign, lettering on a roadway sign. So on a sign that's 4 feet tall, 6-inch lines would take up 3 feet of that 4 feet and wouldn't allow any spacing. So it seems that 6 may be closer to the maximum that you'd want to be looking for here. But just some food for guidance or food for thought or anything like that.
Okay, thank you. That's really helpful. Thanks.
Mhm.
Freddie? You're on mute.
As we all know, tenants come and tenants go. How frequently do you upgrade these signs? Because they will change over time.
Yep, we would change them as if a tenant leaves, they're off that sign. And as a new tenant comes in that space that allows for access to that sign, we would immediately replace with that name. And we would design this sign such that interchange, we could swap out, if you will. We would want to make it pretty seamless.
Okay,
great. Thank you. Nat?
Yeah, I wanted to shift the discussion, please, to just procedural and have a conversation about what's the path to getting a resolution on this. I mean, I really feel like this is I'm really not sure where we're going. I mean, it sounds like there's conceptual approval with granting a variance. It doesn't sound like anyone is prepared to grant a variance tonight on the basis of what's going on account of the number of interrelated things that we've all been discussing. But I'd really like to discuss what's the process for bringing this back to the board so that we can take an action without litigating all of these variables that that really seem to be I mean, we can, are we gonna create, a separate ordinance for a specific signage policy for this place so that we don't have to worry about implications for other signage? Are we gonna, are we gonna make the signage conditional on the outcome of the traffic and circulation study? Are we gonna what's the path forward?
Well, thanks for putting your finger on that. I think I've heard multiple board members say, and I certainly feel completely comfortable with the facade signage proposed and the rationale, et cetera. The concern with the directional signs, there's one of them that needs to be completely redesigned or substantially redesigned in order to direct people not in just one direction, but in two. And the outlier to me is the sign out by the street, but the illuminated sign out by the street, but I could be wrong about that. So, so there are multiple paths forward to answer your question, Nat, I think, and I don't want to. I'm going to stop and let David talk for a minute.
Thanks. I mean, what I would like to suggest, the way I would like to see it move forward, if possible, is to bifurcate it and to approve the facade signs tonight so that Edens can go ahead and start finishing up the facades. And I would like for the other 4 signs, the 3 directory signs and the ID sign, to come back with redesign as necessary to address comments that were made, maybe with some expert testimony about what the right size of the lettering, minimum size of the lettering should be. Although Mr. Weissman gave us, I think, some good information about that. But if the applicant wants to have more flexibility than what 6-inch lettering would indicate, I would want them to come with some expert testimony about speed at which these cars are going to be driving, and thereby what the appropriate lettering might be. It might be less than 6 if an expert could indicate that. So I think there are a lot of questions that need to be addressed with those 4 signs. So that's how I'd like to move forward, and not to wait for the traffic study, Nat. I think the whole question of circulation is really premature to address at this point. The applicant hasn't been thinking about it. They're not proposing to anything about it right now. And I think that's appropriate to exclude from our discussion if and when they want to come back to us with some suggestions for, traffic safety, pedestrian safety, bicycle safety improvements. We'll consider those when they come with them, but it shouldn't muddy the waters here.
Yep.
Makes sense to me.
Any other comments from board members before we hear from the public? Because I would like to make sure that happens.
Louise, could I just jump in with another bit of information that I think they should come back with on directory signs? I think Pallavi made a very good point about the visibility of them at night. And obviously there was testimony by Mr. Leeming that given the material that's worked on, that's in the lettering, that it'll pick up sufficient ambient light that you'll be able to see them. But I like to see how that looks, because I think that's an important question.
Mm-hmm.
And
thanks.
Before we move on to public comment, Madam Chair, I just want to check with Jerry and perhaps Tom as well. Logistically and legally, do you think we would be okay if a board member made the motion after public comment that Councilman Cohen did of bifurcating the application?
I think that could be done. What's the timing on this? When does the timeout?
I don't have
Timeout is January 23rd, 2025.
Okay, we want to make sure that if the motion by Mr. Cohen, something along those lines, is approved, that we get whatever extensions we need from the applicant, because they'll be doing some kind of redesigning, I'm not sure what, of the directory signs and addressing in some fashion the project identification sign.
But then we would get a bifurcated resolution. And the reason I ask is because, when the applicant does come in for their building permits, they would need to show approvals and, and I'm not saying this to poo-poo this idea, but, again, just logistically, I wouldn't want there to be any issues.
Yeah, in effect, it would be that. If the board acts along the lines that David was suggesting, the facade signs would be approved and decision on the others would be deferred pending further.
Yeah,
information.
I would agree with that approach. And on the issue of the facade signs, as we've said a number of times, we're very anxious to have those installed. And I'm hoping that the board would be willing to allow us to apply for permits, assuming we get approval tonight, and we don't have to wait for the resolution to be adopted, as long as Derek and Dan are comfortable with that. We'd like to move forward very quickly in submitting for permits, if that's okay, if that's.
And what we've done, Tom, occasionally in circumstances where there's some urgency with moving ahead, is I just draft a letter for
Right, to
the board approved blank, the resolution will be adopted.
Okay, we would appreciate that.
Okay. So there are 4 members of the public in the attendees room, as it were. Any of you members of the public who would like to address the board, who would like to speak, please raise your hand right now by clicking on the raise hand icon. I'm not seeing any hands go up. Nobody wants to, well, going once, going twice. Okay, no interest in members on the part of members of the public to address the board. So I'll close the public comment portion of the meeting. And I guess I would ask, well, first invite any final comments from board members, maybe specifically to weigh in on David's suggestion of bifurcating this application, moving ahead, allowing a expedited progress on the facade signage and deferring the other things for a bit later after more work is done. Mr. O'Donnell?
Thank you. I agree with David's proposal. I think that the facade signage, is a no-brainer. I must say that I'm a little uncomfortable with the illuminated sign, only because the ordinance specifically forbids it. I know that's the idea of a variance, but we have rejected other requests for illuminated signs in the past based on the ordinance itself, and I don't understand why this is so significantly different. So that's just a matter for deliberation among the board, and I'd be happy to hear anybody's comments on that.
Well, since that's part of what would be deferred, I mean, we could discuss it tonight, or we could just make that note for the applicant, and maybe the illuminated sign will look a little different coming back, or they could offer a specific testimony about why it's so special and so needed. I'm not trying to shut down that conversation. I just think that if we move ahead with David's suggestion, it would not be part of tonight's approval.
Right.
Mr. Cohen?
Just wanted to respond to Owen and say that I think I think the concept of an illuminated sign, there are a lot of things that are envisioned in the ordinance, neon signs, right? White plastic panels with dark lettering on them, like the Bottle King sign, for instance. I hope everybody, remembers that debacle. I don't know how we gave them the variances we gave them, but those are the sort of tacky illuminated signs that I think the ordinance is trying to address. And the comment that I had made, and we've heard this, I think, once before, maybe with the assisted living place on Mount Lucas, and I think we did permit it actually, is that these kinds of signs with only the lettering being illuminated, it's sort of a dark background, and the material where the light is coming through has a filtering effect. So it's not a bright light. It's a pretty subtle kind of internally illuminated sign that I personally don't think and I think it's kind of newish technology, because if you look at that sign, the lettering is actually dark during the day.
Mhm.
And then somehow it's transparent or translucent enough that it's light at night. That may actually be new technology that wasn't even in existence when the ordinance was written. So I'm just giving you what I hope is, not that we have to consider it tonight, as Louise pointed out rightly, but for when we do consider it, I think that this is a subtle, tasteful kind of lighting, even though it is internally illuminated.
And to your point, it would be very helpful, and other people have made this point too, to know what does it look like during the day and how exactly does it present at night? Because I can see how it could be actually less light than if you've got lights on the ground shining up at it. It's less bright, it's less distracting and more readable. So Mr. Leeming, I see your hand up, but I want to ask if there are other board comments before. I'm not seeing any hands go up. Okay, Ryan?
Thank you. Appreciate all the comments tonight. I know there was a lot of discussion. I just, in my mind, wanted to maybe make a couple comments and then just make sure I understood everything clearly. One of the other things we didn't necessarily talk about tonight, which I think it was sort of said but unsaid, is that in relation to the master plan, right? The economic health and viability and vitality of the shopping center is of utmost importance, right? It's of utmost importance to Edens as well. COVID was very difficult for the shopping center, which is a lot of the reasons why a redevelopment plan was thought of. I didn't necessarily work on that plan, but that was thought of, right, as a way to really infuse some development into this place. And I think coming out of COVID, we're out of COVID now. In talking about a year ago when we started thinking about this facade project, a lot of our retailers that weathered the storm are starting to have some of their best years yet, right? And we're starting to see new customers coming to the shopping center. There's new folks. And so I think all the comments, David, you especially on the wayfinding signs, cleaning up the messaging, making sure the arrows are right. I mean, fair, right? We showed sort of a conceptual messaging scheme to maybe give the idea. And in hindsight, probably what we should have done is we probably should have came in and said, nope, this is exactly what you're getting, rather than say, hey, it might be like this. This is exactly what it's going to be, right? These are the exact way the arrows are going to go. These are the exact amount of tenants. These are the size of the letters, et cetera, et cetera. So shame on us for that. I think for the illuminated sign, I don't know if I heard a lot of like true comments on it. And I was trying to figure out what maybe the issue with it. I know I heard a lot about traffic. I heard a lot about the corridor study, and I was just trying to figure out like what do we think the issues that we might need to address with that. I think finding some real world examples of how signs like that might look fair, totally fair. And I think in some of the reference materials, we didn't find one, right? We didn't find one in Princeton that it's exactly this way. And I think that was our intent, because the shopping center in our mind is such a special place that it should have this sort of unique, new, fresh, yes, cutting edge technology, David. I didn't know what day-night acrylic was. Typically what you do is you have a panel that you put a vinyl sticker on, and that vinyl sticker acts as your day-night. So it's called day-night vinyl. This is actually an all-encompassing material that gives you the same effect, that you don't have to fuse two materials together. So we're working with a local sign shop, and they brought that to our attention. They said, hey, we've never made a sign with day-night acrylic before, but we love this sign, and we think this sign could be so special. It's the perfect case study to really put this new sign technology on display. So it will be, filtered, it will be muted lighting, if you will, and only the letters will glow. So we're really excited about that. So I just wanted to make sure I have it all kind of right. And I know if the board wants to move to come back and comment, that I kind of know my marching orders, and I'm not sure I heard any big concerns other than maybe you, Ms. Snuka, on kind of the location of that sign in relation to the entrance.
Mr. Mueller expressed a thought about it too, and he's not a voting member of the of the board, but and I share that too. That I think when you come back, it would be helpful to not only have maybe testimony from the people who are making the sign or know this technology really well. What exactly is it going to look like?
In real life examples.
Why that is the exact right location for it, given the geometry, the narrow driveway, the
parking directly on the driveway.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you.
Okay.
And none of that may be, and how it won't, block visibility for people leaving the shopping center through that driveway. None of that is meant to be throwing cold water on the whole idea, but just that I think we just really need to understand better the rationale for its exact location there and what it's going to look like, because it's, as Mr. O'Donnell pointed out, it's unusual for us to allow, illuminated signs, and we need a belt and suspenders sense of comfort with it, I think. Mr. Lesko and then Pallavi Nuka.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to add to that list another question that I had in my report, just how the sign works with the trees around it. There are some small trees that it seems like it might be, or not small, I should say, just not mature trees yet. It's unclear if there's going to be landscaping. It's unclear, is the sign going to be right on one of them? Is it going to be between them? So that's just another thing I'd like to add to that list.
Okay.
Yeah. And so just to, I share Owen. Is Owen still there?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I share Owen's concern about the sign, the lighted sign overall. Another just quick question, and I agree with David's suggestion that we bifurcate this and allow the shopping center to move ahead with the signage for the shops. But one quick clarification question. Is there a limit on the timing? So I understand that the hours that you typically turn the signs on and off. Is there anything in the ordinance, in the municipal ordinances, about how long lighted signs can be left lit at night?
Eric?
I believe it's 11 o'clock when not needed for safety purposes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
And just as a reminder, though, obviously, if a variance is granted, the board has a lot of leeway as to what the conditions might be. So the timing might be one that you think about.
Okay. So Mr. Cohen, do you want to frame a motion?
Sure. I move that we approve the 24 variances for the facade mounted merchant signs, and that we carry consideration of the remaining 4 signs to a later date. I don't know if if the applicant wants to propose a date certain, and if Carrie has the calendar that she could identify a date that would be appropriate, but that would be the motion, basically.
And David, what specifically are we looking for with respect to the 3 directory signs? What additional information? We know there was that one where it was just wrong there or was in the wrong direction. But can you elaborate on that at all? Or it seems
Yeah,
to me that Mr. Lemming has a good understanding of it. I don't, but
Yeah, I think it was design of sign number 1 to show what it will look like with direction for some establishments to go straight, while other establishments you would turn right to get to. So that's basically the design question. For sign number 2, it would be the precise location of it. I had suggested that it move a little bit, although it wasn't ever even shown on the plan, really. It was a leader that sort of identified where it was going to be, but I think it should be shown on the plan to scale and with a precise location. And then for the D3 sign, I think there's a lot more consideration to be given. I proposed it wasn't really in the right location for the way the traffic would want to move, given the stated purpose of the sign. I suggested it be put in a different location, but of course, depending on what location they ultimately want to, if they want to keep it where they have it, again, it should be shown on the plan. We should see the orientation of the sign. And depending on the orientation of the sign, the actual graphic information on the sign might change. So there's just, with sign D3, there was way too little information to even understand what was being proposed. So each of the signs has different criteria that have to be satisfied.
Yeah, thank you, David.
And I would just add to that, and I think the applicant already understands this, that it will be helpful for us to know exactly what they think they need in terms of the size of the letters.
Yes.
Yeah. But it's not just size, it's also spacing. So
Yes,
like
yeah,
you could have 6-inch letters, but if there's half an inch between them, that becomes much less legible than.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, thank you for that.
David,
Claudia?
do we want to require that the letters be 6 inches?
No, we want
No.
them to provide.
We want them, right.
Provide expert testimony. We want them to propose a letter size, and we want them to provide expert testimony as to why that's the right size.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you. Claudia?
Just in addition to what Councilman Collins said, I would like to see an AI markup with a view of where the sign will be and what it will look like, as if we were standing there looking at it, because just showing it on a plan doesn't give me the feeling of what it'll look like. But perhaps from the bird's eye view, standing or driving in, what it would look like and how it's oriented.
Okay.
So it's orientation and the materials and what it looks like. If there's landscaping around it, that would help too. We're
Yep.
aware of that.
Thank you. So, so David made a motion. Would someone like to second that?
Second.
Thank you, Alvin McGowan. Mr. Mueller, do you want to?
I'm also available to provide a date if the applicant wants to
Oh, good.
consider an
Well-
extension.
Mr. Letizia and Mr. Leeming, do you want to try to do that tonight, or do you want to work with, you want to consult and then come back? We'll certainly give you the, we'll try to get, we won't put this off.
My preference would be to, if we can announce a date tonight, I think we can avoid renoticing.
Right.
Okay, yeah, all right.
That would be
good.
my preference.
Yeah, I would
Okay.
ask Carrie if, I see that, I think the next meeting's the 14th. I don't think, we're not, obviously not on the agenda, nor we'd be ready for that meeting, but what are the following meetings, and maybe we can all agree on one.
Carrie, can you,
Well, let me. I only had 2025 in front of me. I'm sorry. Okay.
we have
So
December 5th,
December
December
meeting,
19th?
December meeting, we have 40-42 North Lane. And then on December 19th, we were kind of holding off on waiting to see if that was needed. Staff's, we've been very busy, so we were hopeful for a day off.
Sorry, Carrie.
Sorry.
Yeah.
A little honesty, I'm sorry.
No, that's perfectly
January-
fine. I'm sure the board is in agreement.
Yes, exactly.
What was
I
the date?
shouldn't just speak for staff. I'm sure everybody's tired. January 9 is Hillier. January 13 will be RB Homes, I hope.
December, do you think you guys would be ready by December 19th?
Oh, that sounds like fun.
I think that's the night Carrie wanted to give everybody off. I was not gonna
Yes.
jump in on that. I was gonna,
How
I was
about,
actually
like,
gonna
The
say-
23rd, we have until the 23rd as it is. I think Louise, you said
January 23rd.
January 23rd is an opening. We
Was
can
the
pick
5th
one with
booked up?
RB Homes.
Was December 5th booked up? Is that what I heard, Carrie?
Yes.
Yeah, it's a big project. It's
Okay.
going to be carried to, well, it's a big project.
Okay.
If I could just jump in, December 19th would be the best bet. We don't know what January or February or March are going to look like.
And you have nobody scheduled on that night yet? Because I have a slight conflict when you start the meeting, but it doesn't last for very long. So if you had someone on the agenda first, we could go second. But
We
I'd be
don't
happy to-
anticipate having anyone else.
yeah,
That was also a date we were considering putting Lamlin on if we needed to. Tom?
and then the first January meeting was what date again? And was that booked
That-
up?
Yeah, Landland, I mean,
never
sorry,
do that.
September
January.
30th. So that's my pressure. I get to pressure Tom because the time's out on the 30th and we need another extension. So
So Ryan, the 19th will not work for you?
It's just
Well, can we start the meeting late?
if yeah, I mean if you could.
What?
7:30, will that work?
8?
7:30 is probably fine. If I'm not here right promptly at 7:30, Tom, I'll let you set the stage and I'll join ASAP. But I would
Okay.
I'd love to work with the board to keep everything at the shopping center moving, and we can certainly commit to responding quickly and staying engaged on this.
Okay,
So
Okay.
so so December 19th, and unless something comes up that we can or need to deal with between 7 and 7:30, we'll probably start the meeting at 7:30 instead of at 7.
thank you for that consideration.
Mr. Mueller, do you have anything to go over? I expect that you do before we vote.
I think it's pretty clear on what we're looking for when they come back with the directory signs.
I think so. I think we have.
There are a few.
If it's not clear, they can look at the video again.
Yeah.
I don't want to try to reiterate everything.
Yeah, and I think there's some flexibility there also. If
Sure.
they think it's good adding X, Y, and Z as points that we should be talking about,
Yeah.
let's do that. Now on the memo by Dan and Derek, if I could, on page 4 of 6, under lighting of signs, staff comment, the values of the building elevation sheet shall be revised to match the values identified in Title 1 above. Should that still be in, guys?
Yes. Yes. there was just some discrepancies between the maximum permitted sign size on those sheets.
Okay, great. And then under 4.0 C, which is relation of proposed structures to the environment, staff comment 1, the applicant shall provide for the planning board's review elevations of the buildings with the facade signage proposed in this application along with signage submitted under separate signage applications. It seems to me we've now seen this. Do we
Yeah.
need this? Correct?
Correct. That appears to have been provided today as an exhibit.
Mhm.
Yeah. The applicant shall advise of the hours of operation of the sign lighting, also the proposed color spectrum, and provide a light study. Do we need to do that? This is your staff comment number 2.
I think that would roll into what would be discussed
Okay,
at the following meeting.
yep. Hold on. Bear with me for a second.
And there was a comment about the signature block, which we will agree to do, make that change.
Is that on Justin's?
No, that was on Dan and Derek's.
And I would imagine that as this is
Oh,
being
yeah, yeah.
deferred to the following meeting, that signature block wouldn't have to be revised until there's a resolution for that meeting.
Yeah,
So
right.
maybe that comment and the comment
Yep. Okay.
comment regarding the site lighting can be carried to then. And Derry, I hope you appreciate the fact that this one is numbered this time, the pages.
Thank you. I think I'm the one that mentioned that last time.
Yeah, it was Louise. Okay, so that's it?
Okay. Right, moved by David, seconded by Alvin. Carrie, would you call the roll, please?
Yes, of course. Mr. Bodekheimer,
Yes.
Ms. Capizoli,
Yes.
Mr. Cohen,
Yes.
Mr. McGowan,
Yes.
Ms. Nuka,
Yes.
Mr. O'Donnell,
Yes.
Ms. Perlmutter,
Yes.
Ms. Wilson Anderson,
Yes.
Mrs. Wilson.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you very much.
Justin?
Justin raised his hand.
Just a logistical question, Jerry. If board members weren't here tonight and they want to vote on the other 2 that we hear next time, they will have to watch this video, correct?
Yes.
Got it.
Okay.
And Jerry, you'll write that letter that I
Yep.
asked for,
Yep.
that we can submit with the permit applications.
Yep.
Great, thank
Okay.
you.
So,
All right.
thanks, Mr. Letizia, and thank you, Ryan, Leeming and Alex Dougherty. We really, really do support the shopping center and want it to be as the best it can be for the whole community. And I apologize to the board for taking us off onto the ped bike tangent. I just feel like at the end of the day, it's just so important to get that right, but it isn't a part of tonight's application. So, so forgive me for that. Hopefully you can move ahead real quickly on the facade signs, and we'll be back to look at the rest of the issues that were raised tonight. And again, thanks.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank
thank
you for
you.
the time and the thoughtful comments and the support of the shopping center.
You're welcome. Mr. Cohen?
I'd like to offer a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Bye.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. See you next
night.
week.
Hey.
Bye-bye.
Have a good
Good
weekend.
night.
Get rest.